a lot of us buy things based on status. Like the idea that we don't buy things based on what people around us think is nonsense. We buy things based on status. To deny it is absurd. But I do think that for the big purchases in your life, like a house, a car, the big things, you've got to run the numbers. And if you decide, hey, you know what? I want to buy a house, even though it's going to cost me an extra $600,000 in opportunity costs and phantom costs, but I'm going to do it because I like it or it makes me feel good. I say, God bless. But if you simply make decisions based on what other people around you do, then you will discover, like you did, I thought I was going to feel a certain way and I don't really feel that way. And that, for me, is an opportunity for you to interrogate your own beliefs.
And money is like a personal zero-sum game, right? Like, so I can't just spend indefinitely. So buying that ridiculous house out in the countryside takes away from something which might have genuinely brought me closer to happiness, like, I don't know, going away with my family or whatever it might have been. You talked there about buying property. I find that really curious because the popular narrative is, for most people, the minute they get any decent amount of money is to buy your first house. And that's what people do. They take a 10% deposit or a 20% deposit, whatever it might be, and they buy a house. Why is that a poor investment? Why is that a bad thing to do? Because that does kind of sit counter to the popular narrative.
Well, we have to remember, first of all, where the popular narrative came from. In America, if you ask people what is the American dream, the answer is inextricably tied up with a single family home with a white picket fence. That's not an accident. That is the result of decades of messaging. Some might call it propaganda. First of all, most people in the world do not live in single family homes like we do in America. That has caused a lot of issues. But to leave that part aside, this is how most people think about buying a house. They think, grandma bought a house in Austin, Texas in 1970 for $100,000. Grandma just sold it 50 years later for $1 million. Grandma made $900,000. They go, it's the most profitable thing you could do, buy a house. I go, okay, that sounds really nice. Did Granny factor in how much she spent on maintenance for the past 50 years? No. Did Granny factor in inflation and how that affected her return? No. What's inflation? Did Granny factor in the opportunity costs of what that down payment could have been used if invested in the S&P 500? No. And did Granny look at all these phantom costs such as interest on the loan? No. It's not simply the bigger number minus the smaller number. That's wrong. That is simplistic. For the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to go deeper. Again, when I was living here, I kept a very close eye on real estate. And the place right next to me, same square footage, same number of bedrooms, same everything, it would have cost 2.2 times what I was paying in rent. So just to give you an example, if I was paying $3,000 a month, it would have cost about $6,400 a month to own. Okay. I said, you know what? I like renting. If I have a problem, I just text my landlord. I took the $3,400 I would have spent owning when factoring in phantom costs, maintenance, interest, taxes, all that, and I simply invested it. And I made more money doing that than I would have owning.
What about if you're buying somewhere for the rental income?
That can work. So owning real estate as an investment can be part of a well-diversified portfolio if you run the numbers. Right now, there's a lot of hype. People go, I'm going to buy a house, and if I don't like it or whatever, I'm just going to rent it out. Okay, fine. But you've got to remember that if your mortgage is $1,000, that's not just the amount you're paying. There's a lot more. In fact, in my estimations, I add 50% to that price. So $1,500 a month, which would include a roof repair happening 19 years from now. We've got to amortize that out. Labor costs, interest, all that. If you can rent it out and make a profit, fantastic. It cash flows, that's awesome. What you discover is that most people who buy a primary residence, the place they want to live in, they buy it because they want it, and then they tell themselves it's an investment. Buying a house can be an investment, but oftentimes it's not. And there are far better, far simpler investments. Here's my key message. I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me. I've been accused of saying buying a house is bad. No, I never said that. In fact, I will buy a house myself one day. And when I do, it's going to be a terrible financial decision, and I'm going to do it anyway. My key message is, for the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to run the numbers. Sometimes buying can be a good financial decision. Often renting can be a good financial decision. Run the numbers and never feel guilty for renting.
As it relates to buying a house, I've always been hesitant because I'm scared really of the point you mentioned about being anchored to a location. So the way that I've kind of justified that away is by saying, well, I'll just Airbnb it when I'm not there, or I'll rent it out if I decide to move to New York or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is there a cost in the opportunity of being less flexible about where you can be, that people don't think about, especially when they're younger?
Yes.
And they're probably a little bit unencumbered by, life.
Yes.
At that point.
Yes. Buying a house is one of the most profound financial decisions that will affect your lifestyle ever. You can sell a car, even at a minor loss, but selling a house involves massive transaction costs and labor that most people don't anticipate. One of the reasons that I rent is for lifestyle reasons. Financial, yes, I make more money renting and investing the difference than I would owning, but also lifestyle. I don't know that I'm going to be in the same place for 10 years, which is one of the key things that I would encourage people to decide before they buy. You want to know that you're going to be there for at least 10 years, because then you can spread all those transaction costs, spread them out over 10 years. They become much more affordable. It's kind of like buying an expensive jacket. If you buy it and you wear it once, that's really expensive. If you buy it and wear it over 10 years, it becomes a lot more affordable. Now take that, multiply it by 1,000, and that's a house. Particularly for young people, I don't give a lot of unsolicited advice. I used to do it when I was young, when I just learned about money, and I realized nobody really wants to hear it. They really don't. If somebody comes to me, they come to my blog, my social media, great. Otherwise, I'm not going around telling people you should do this. Once in a while, though, I get a young person asking me, I'm just about to graduate from college. What advice do you have for me? And at that moment, the best piece of advice that I have is move where the action is. And typically that's a big city. So that would be where there's more jobs, where there's simply more people if you're looking for relationships. And there's a lot of tacit knowledge that happens in big cities. Like, oh, have you tried this? Oh, what have you seen that musical? Have you tried this thing, this idea that's going around? So often surrounding yourself geographically can be hugely rewarding to you as you grow. You can't do that if you bought a house because everybody told you that it was going to be the best investment. And if I were to say, show me where you calculated the numbers that it was going to be a great investment, 75+% of people have never created a simple spreadsheet.
How does buying a house compare in terms of returns to something like investing in the S&P 500?
It's quite poor, actually.
Really?
Yeah, over about 100 years, there's great research showing that it has essentially matched inflation. It's been slightly above inflation. People find this mind-boggling. Again, because they think somebody bought a house for $100K and they sold it for $1 million, so it's $900K. But they don't properly factor in inflation, opportunity costs, phantom costs, all that. It's really hard to factor these numbers in, but it's critical because it's the biggest purchase of your life. I'll give you another example of where people don't properly factor it in. Some people pay a financial advisor 1%. They go 1%. It's not a big deal. I'll pay 1%. What they don't realize is that 1% over the course of their lifetime will take 28% of their returns and hand them over in fees. Think about it. If you make $1 million in investing over the course of your life, $280,000 are going right out of your pocket into that advisor's pocket. Now that's super counterintuitive. 1% turns into 28%. How does it work? You can simply go online and search for investment cost calculator and plug in the numbers, add a 1% fee, and you will see. The point of this is that sometimes money is highly counterintuitive. Really counterintuitive. It's unlike anything else. If you and I go to sushi right now and we get sushi for $20, it'll be fine. If we get it for $100, what do you think? Probably be a little better, right? And if we get it for $1,000, the fish will have been flown in from Tokyo this morning and it will be served in an absolutely stunning setting. So in other words, you pay more, you get better results. We're used to that. If I spend more on a sweater, it's probably going to have a different type of fabric. More on a car, it's going to look cooler, have cooler features. Money's not like that. If you spend more, you don't get better returns. You don't get better anything. In fact, if anything, you get worse returns. People find this mind-boggling because it is. It's counterintuitive. But in investing, costs matter. In buying a house, you've got to run the numbers because they are totally counterintuitive.